Yeah, there's two of us.
Wow. Nick Land must be proud.
So we are 3, 2, 1 live with Dr. Bones.
Kapow!
Kapow, the doctor. We're back. Egoism and the absolute, and we're talking witchcraft, symbols, and categories, and the use of symbols in witchcraft. I'm sort of the belief, good doctor. Actually, before we get into this, let's talk about our cutting edge critique we got 2 days ago. So I'll just read it word for word because I don't want to misquote them.
Of course not.
You are alienating furry comrades with all the unnecessary kink shaming, but do furries actually like Rand? Is there some kind of Randy and furry theory? WTF?
So. I'll address the second point. Yes, there is. I don't know what possesses. I don't know. At this point, I'm firmly convinced that maybe collectively the entire species is just lost it. I mean, you see people in fursuits with literal swastikas, Nazi armbands. Like, I have no idea what the fuck is going on there. Yeah, there's a whole libertarian contingent. I have no idea what the fuck. And first off, and to address the first point, do whatever. I don't give a fuck. I mean, it's interesting and delightful in its own way, I'm sure, but I still laugh. And besides, none of the furry community can complain because I give the hentai people shit all the fucking time. So if the people who jack off to cat girls can deal with it, so can the furry community.
Yeah, and as you were saying earlier, as soon as they start rounding up furries and killing them, or there's furry genocide, then we will have to seriously consider the point of isolating furry comrades.
Absolutely, right? We'll do a whole show on it.
We'll do a whole show on the furry genocide, and I will apologize for this current sentence.
Don't give them that fucking term. Don't give them that term. They're gonna fucking use it. I guarantee you, the alt-right furries are gonna roll with it. Like it's gonna be
That's right. And you had that interesting post where you were talking about isolating all four of the parts of the political compass with the Alex Jones people. When I saw that, I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, I pissed off anarchists, Alex Jones, the fucking ultra third worldists, and then people complaining that committing white genocide or some bullshit like that. So just another day in the neighborhood.
That's lovely. So I guess we shouldn't be reactionaries and react to them. We should just sort of do our thing, and let's just talk about what we were going to talk about.
I'm all ears.
Okay. So symbols in and of themselves, are they worth anything? The sort of post-structuralist theory talks a lot about symbols being empty, symbols being sort of in that they refer to each other and they're never fully fleshed out. So there's sort of there's a symbolic decline in the worth of symbols. So what are the worth of symbols to you, Mr. Bones, Professor Doctor?
Well, it depends. I think the word here, the operative word is the word ludic, which indicates a playful nature. So as long as we're utilizing symbols in a playful manner and not taking them ultra seriously, there is power. And I think it's kind of foolish to think that just because something isn't fleshed out doesn't mean that it doesn't have some kind of quality about it, because the majority of human interaction is running, a huge amount of it is running on a subconscious level that we're not even fucking aware of. We may not be aware of the reasons why we like something or why we're reacting to it this way, or why it turns us on sexually to throw on fursuits, rub each other's dicks, whatever. We may not be consciously aware of that, and yet at the same time it has power. And again, I think to bring it back to that, the world of sexuality, I've always found is a very, very interesting symbolic thing. Like, why you have a symbol, right? High heels that are literally causing an intense amount of sexual reaction. And it's not the shoes itself, it's what the shoes represent. So this is a symbol, this is an idea having a literal biological impact on the human being. And I think, again, like a lot of people sometimes, when they get into egoism, and they're talking about the geists, the specters, the spooks, whatever, they think it's this just airy thing in your head that you can just flush out, and it's that simple. When in reality, symbols are literally are causing biochemical reactions. They're, running human sexuality. They can cause huge emotional states and everything like that. These symbols are innately tuned to the way the human mind and the human body works. So even if they're not fully fleshed out, there's tons of people. Look at veterans, right?
All right, let's look at some veterans. All right. So I'm imagining I'm looking at a veteran. Right. What are we seeing?
The best example I've used before is imagine like your sort of typical Vietnam veteran.
Okay.
These older guys, they've got the fucking hat that's all about the Vietnam War. They've got a jacket, POW, MIA, flat. This symbol of that flag means so fucking much to them that they have devoted their entire fucking lives to it. And I remember watching one show about this murder, and like the local sort of like VFW wanted to do like a burial because the person was like a Marine or something like that.
Yeah.
And they go out and doing the flag folding ceremony. But these guys were all Vietnam veterans, so you're looking at it and it looks really bad because they're old and they're like having trouble and like they're kind of like, but they're trying really hard, and you can tell that this means so fucking much to them. There's so much power in this symbol, and I can guarantee you, if you could plug up those people to all sorts of sensors and analyzing chemicals running through their brain or even the electrical patterns, that something biological would be happening in those people, and it's revolving around their interaction with that symbol. So it's not just an idea, like a word that we write down on paper. It has, I wouldn't necessarily say an innate meaning like the fucking bullshit Platonists, but it has an energy. It has a thrust, I would say. Each symbol has some kind of force behind it. It can be subverted, it can be changed, but there's an impulse.
So symbols are sort of a conductor, although not to get too off track, but I think a Platonist might say they don't have intrinsic meaning because there's
a Platonist. Who the fuck gives a shit what they think? Ask the people that think there's an ideal chair somewhere floating out in the universe.
A formless chair.
Ooh, the ultimate chair. Yeah, no.
Well, that's why I like Hegel. Is Hegel sort of takes the idea that we do sort of have vague access to what a chair is by eventually we analyze all the categories and how it's used, and we get to an essential quality where it doesn't self-contradict, and then we get rid of the whole idea of a chair and then get to sitting, and then we're stopped talking about chairs. So that's kind of fun. So anyway, how do you, Dr. Bones, in your practice, because I know you're practicing wizard? What do you call it? Wizard? Or,
there's so many names.
Yeah, I feel like you probably voodoo.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm an occultist. Is the sort of generic term.
Yeah.
Well, when you start getting into the world of the occult, symbols take on a different sort of thing. In the occult, you have the idea of contagion, right? So if I get something similar to this thing, because it's similar in a way, symbolically, it carries either some essence of that thing or the energy of that thing, or allows me access to that thing. So if I get a picture of you, that image or that shape or that symbol of you contains some kind of essence of you. And by doing things to that picture, I can therefore do things to you. Or if I'm, let's say I'm doing something to help someone get laid, a common thing for that is a cinnamon stick. So this sort of goes into a more African metaphysics rather than European. So in the European occult tradition, the main focus is on like 4 elements, right? Fire, water, wind, earth, whatever the fuck. In African metaphysics, it's a different ballgame. It's focused almost on sensations. So you have heating and cooling, and then you have sweet and sour. So cinnamon has a sweetness to it and a heating element, which makes it ideal for romance. So I'm sweetening someone to someone, and then I'm adding a bit of heat. Now, where this gets into difficulty with what we're talking about is an occultist would tell you that comes from the spirit of the cinnamon, that it is not some kind of abstract psychological principle. There is a whole school of magic that I think is a bunch of bullshit. A lot of the Jungian people are like this. And they're like, oh, I'm not really interacting with cinnamon. I'm interacting with my concept of cinnamon, et cetera, et cetera.
But no, it is the actual object, is what you're saying. It's not the idea of the object. It is precisely the object itself.
Exactly. I mean, my own experience in occultism has shown me that there are many different types of spirits. So the spirit of that cinnamon is what is adding the power to the work, not this symbol of what cinnamon is in my head. So it's much more like they'll talk about signs in occultism. How like something like a frizzly rooster is what they call them. It's this like breed of chicken that like all its feathers like grow backwards. So a lot of people in the South used to keep it in their yards because it's like, oh, here's this thing that grows as its feathers growing. It's good for uncrossing. Essentially, the big difference is in the occultism, it is believed that the physical shapes of things are clues to the spiritual force or the spirit behind them. So you get someone who is driving, a super big car, flashy and everything like that. It's a sign that the person inside of it is probably a fucking asshole. It's a natural manifestation of their own spirit, that sort of thing. So it's less of a psychological.
So when you get cut off by someone in a BMW or they're driving like an asshole, it's different than like the other luxury cars. There's something very specific.
Yeah, it's
that I've noticed about a BMW.
Yeah, it's a special breed of asshole.
Yeah, it's not necessarily that they're rich. It's not because there's Mercedes drivers, but there's something within the BMW itself. I think that once you get into it, it's not your idea of maybe it's the idea of the BMWs, but there's something about the creation that goes into that specific sort of car. So so the idea is you actually do have access to these sort of objects, and whether or not you have an idea of the object, once you're involved with the object, right? Then the object works upon you.
But it's an interconnect. It's almost like the web of Maya in the Hindu tradition, in that you have all these jewels in the web of Maya, which is reality, that are constantly reflecting off of one another. So when we're talking about a spiritual level, it becomes pretty much impossible to detect, oh, it's this one thing, because again, the assholes are the one that's buying it, and so the assholes sort of, their assholeness is coming into the car and creating a combined image.
Yeah, so that's wonderful. So it's not necessarily that the person who is an asshole gets into, say, I don't know, maybe like a 90s Camry, and then he won't necessarily drive like the asshole combined with the BMW. The asshole BMW machine, very powerful machine. It's like it's a fusion.
It's like very rarely do you see like a Prius pull up and then a guy get out of it in a fucking biker vest with like a tattoo on his forehead that says "fuck off" and he has a patch on his jacket that says "nuke whales." You know what I mean? So it's like, it's not that the Prius is transforming bikers into vegans, but it's that those people are getting this car, and that sort of energy and vibe is synthesizing into a manifestation in the world of this thing.
Yeah. So, speaking of connection and interconnection, after we're done talking, you're talking to the famous Justin Murphy. And Justin Murphy found out about youth because me and Justin both talk about accelerationism. And a lot of accelerationism is about sort of feedback loops and circuitries.
And Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah, like Sonic the Hedgehog.
That's big. I know that's big.
The thing, Justin Murphy occupies a very specific place.
Oh.
Accelerationism.
Does he? Oh boy. Well, he sent me. I want to show you what he sent me. He sent me.
Okay, what did he send you?
I'm not even shitting you. Okay, so he sends me this and he's like, "Hey, excited for the show. Check this out. This is what now you're an accelerator. You tell me what the fuck this is supposed to mean."
Okay.
If I don't know if you can see it there. I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means.
Oh no.
I don't know.
I
Does
don't
that
know.
mean something? I don't know what that is. Is this a magic spell that he's trying to put on me? I don't know what the fuck this is.
So on that note, I didn't want to get into Justin Murphy lore too much, but since he sent you a picture of Sonic the Hedgehog and Tails making out,
Yeah.
maybe it's worth giving you like a primer, like a Justin Murphy primer.
Is that what we're gonna talk about? Is like
No, no.
slash fan fiction? I mean, whatever.
No, well, he's a professor. He's a professor at the University of Southampton. I'm he's sort of like the king of hot takes. Like
oh boy.
And he got a 30-day paid leave for what was it? He tried, I forget, he's tried to link if you're anti-abortion.
Oh, this guy.
You should be pro necrophilia. Yeah, the necrophilia. That's the one.
That's the guy.
Yeah, that's him.
Right.
So
well, that would explain the Sonic the Hedgehog thing, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. Am I guess supposed to like get something from that? I guess I don't know.
I don't quite. I'm like I'm a therapist. I'm a pretty intuitive guy. I don't know. I honestly cannot think of a reason why he would send that to you.
I don't know. You're telling me. I have no idea.
He's just sort of like, hey, look forward to talking to you. Person who I haven't talked to before. Here's a picture of Sonic and Tails making out.
Yeah, basically, that's exactly what happened. That's God's truth. I mean, you tell me what the fuck I'm supposed to do with that.
I can't really.
Wow, some doctor you are.
Well, I got a master's degree, I'm not.
That's the same thing. Like in Florida, a master's degree, you could start a pill mill tomorrow, dress in white robes. It's the same fucking thing.
Yeah. Oh man. So I actually was gonna talk to him because I had this thought. Maybe I should unpack this with you and get a non-hot take person first. I said,
oh God.
Well, I haven't talked with him. So I was actually scared to talk with him. And I was gonna talk with him about 6 months ago, and I was just like, you know what, I can't. I just can't. I was just like worried. But then I thought of a really stupid hot take, and I was like, Justin, we should talk about this because you're the guy to talk about this, which is you get people that are anti-global warming and you get people that deny global warming. But do you see something that's missing there? Where's the people that are pro-global warming?
They have those.
They are? What is a pro-global warming person?
Oh, yeah. You haven't heard the arguments? Their arguments are that the hottest periods on the planet's history have also been the most commercially successful, and that civilizations adapt, and that if the globe heats up, that it's going to free up a whole bunch of resources and turn the globe to more temperate climates and all that stuff. Yeah, those people are out there.
So what would happen? What would happen if somebody lived a life? I think there would be it would be bad voodoo for yourself, not to use the term too, colloquially, but I was working this out the other day. I was like, what if it's okay, maybe I myself, just how people are anti-global warming, they're like, well, I may not be able to change the environment, but I can do little things like recycle. So on the same token, the pro-global warming people may not be able to change the environment. So I imagine a pro-global warming person. It's like, well, I personally maybe can't warm the earth, but I can do my part by not driving, not recycling.
The big thing in the pro-global warming thing, part of the narrative is that it's not humans.
That it's not humans.
Yeah, they think it's a natural cycle, which, I mean, to be fair, yes, the Earth has gone through natural cycles. For instance, one of the things that's interesting is, I had read about, right now, melanoma is increasing all over the globe.
Yeah.
What I find interesting about that is that the magnetosphere has cycles, and right now it's at its lowest cycle. The magnetosphere protects us from radiation and shit like that. Well, that's pretty good evidence of a natural cycle that has a adverse effect on human beings. We can catalog this, we can see it. It's there. There's no amount of pollution that's going to affect the magnetosphere. What the pro-global warming crowd is, and again, they don't call themselves that, but their thing is that this is a natural cycle, that the Earth is going through natural cycles, that we are in a warming period. And while it certainly will be difficult for some people, it will also bring prosperity and new possibilities.
Huh.
I mean, they don't know their dick from their ass, but that's what they say.
But that's the broken windows argument. It'll bring new possibilities to sink Florida into the ocean, except Orlando, right?
Oh, don't worry. I already have a map. I already have a map of where Florida's going to go. I have it linked up to the water levels that would take millennia to reach to. I already know what the fuck is going to stay, what isn't. I'm super pissed off at some parts that are going to stay. Super fucking pissed off. Like, one of the parts that's going to stay almost totally is Polk County.
Huh.
Polk County has the highest rate of bestiality in the state of Florida.
They keep track of that.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's a national pastime down here. Polk County believes they're still fighting the Civil War. Polk County has the this huge concentration of the Klan. So like, when the waters come, Miami will be lost, Tampa will be lost, all these wonderful places. But you know what will survive? The racist, backwards, redneck empire of Polk County. That's why it's important. I will be starting an anarchist pirate community in the new Floridian archipelago, and we will make war upon Polk County and, do whatever we have to do.
That's a good point. It will be an archipelago, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it's going to be great. It's
going
to be, because the way I figure, right, my grand Floridian plan here is, as the waters rise, people aren't going to be buying property in Florida, which is going to drive the land prices way the fuck down. As the waves continue to go, people are going to be too freaked out. The population is going to slowly flee north, leaving wide parts of the space empty, and also land and buildings cheap as fuck, because people are going to be worried about them sinking. The market will crash completely down here, and in the ruins, you should be able to get shit pretty cheap.
Yeah, so here's a question. Will tomorrow take care of itself? Should we worry about these things?
I mean, it depends on what your perspective is. If you're, some cosmic body floating in space, then no, you don't have to give a fuck. But ask any of the people in the California wildfires that burned to death.
Yeah.
And suddenly you give a fuck. I mean, even if, as some of these climate change scientists are talking about, we're too far gone, right? Well, I mean, but you can still do things. If I lived in fucking Miami today, and I can see the writings on the fucking wall, I can start making attempts to get the fuck out. And again, I think the left has to start, when we're really talking about dealing with climate change, we have to start analyzing, okay, well, what do we really want to do? And that's why on the guillotine, and when I'm talking to comrades, talk to people, start making bug out bags, start like collecting like water and shit. When the hurricane hit the panhandle, the state didn't give a fuck. The cops actually caught a whole bunch of 3%er militia types driving around in a fake cop car. AR-15s, everything. Hey, Florida's not an open carry state, but these motherfuckers were teched out in tactical gear. So, we're talking about symbols. All of a sudden, this militia comes in with all the trappings and symbols of authority. They had patches that said, security and shit like that. No one would have questioned these people. And most frighteningly of all, in this fake cop car, painted cop car, it had the lights. All these people were carrying zip tie handcuffs. So they were prepared to detain people. What they would do with them, God fucking knows. Considering the very racist element running through the 3%er militia, you basically had a super a military trained version of the Klan running around pretending to be the cops. And because people believed in that symbol and have that symbol, and again, when we're talking about the power that symbols have over people, what was it like for them to sit in that car? To feel like they are the law. Is it going to make them more violent? Is it going to, put their adrenaline a little bit higher? That happened. And especially when we look at the California wildfires and you have these poor fucking climate refugees now living in a Walmart parking lot or being evicted from camp out sites by the cops, the goal that these people need to realize, that all of us need to realize, is that the state is not coming to help us.
Yeah.
No one is coming to save you. Nobody.
I think that's a really good point. And I'm not the first person to say this, definitely. This is where capitalism is not good. Like, if you ever, I don't make my position on capitalism too clear, but it's sort of like just an empty, vacuous space. The problem with capitalism is it's just there's just not enough. There's just nothing really there. It's you get the way people exchange. but eventually you're going to come down to the place where there's conflict and there's human disaster and war, and the state and the failings of the state. And if your state is sort of a capitalist state, essentially, it's just sort of not, it's going to be gone because it's all tailored to this weird economic system that really doesn't have anything to do with citizens killing each other.
Yeah, or
right?
saving lives.
Yeah, no, it has nothing to do with that.
Yeah, when your entire universe boils down to currency and the exchange of it, building a seawall instead of like, hey, we need a fucking seawall, it becomes, well, how much is this going to cost?
Yeah, it always goes back.
Yeah, so and so that's what the fucking, and that is the big dehumanizing element in capitalism, and one of my particular hatreds for it. You see this most often in the most present example that I see is like in court cases, in court settlements. You know, your neighbor comes, he rapes your dog, and then he shoots it in the head.
In Polk County, probably.
Oh, definitely.
I hear that happens there.
That's
heard from a reliable source.
Look it up.
Yeah.
So the court, you know, this is a dog that you raised with your kids and everything like that. The best they can do is give you the market value for the dog, which is like $60, and maybe the dude gets, you know, some bestiality charge. But the same way, like, you see a person, they go to prison for fucking 15 years, come to find out it's all bullshit. They were innocent. They get out and they're like, oh, here's $5 million. Like, that somehow even remotely equates becoming being forced to become a subhuman, stuck in a cage, abused for 15 fucking years. Not to mention all the memories you've lost. You don't know your fucking kids. The world has changed. You don't understand anything. This is something irrevocably damaging. And because currency can't measure that, dollars can't measure going in when your kid was a child and now coming out and missing all these things. There's no way to tangibly measure that on a numerical scale. And so capitalism simply throws it away because they have no way to fucking measure it. Yeah. So in the end, you get measly $5 million that you're going to need for fucking therapy. Yeah, it's insane.
And the problem with materialism that I've always had is materialism assumes that sort of worth towards material. I don't know what a state alternative would be, despite, you know, which is partly why I don't necessarily have too strong a position on what the composition of the state is going to be. Besides, hopefully, it won't.
Oh, no state. How about that? Yeah. No state. No state. Zero state.
But as the issue, but where is the zero state? I'm so cynical when it comes to the zero state.
We've got to create it now. There's a zero state every time one of these fucking hurricanes roll through and blows whatever city it rolls through out of its ass. There's no fucking state. There's no state right now in fucking France. There's so many people running around burning shit and attacking shit that the French police cannot answer. They are in dire fucking straits. There is no way to stop this. None. They think they have another fucking revolution on their hands. It's messy. It's amorphous. In those struggles, in those riots, there is literally no state. The state is at the edge of the riot, battling them back for the control.
So as we're talking about symbols and categories, talk about the category of the state, which is, you know, even when it's present, it's never there. It's like a person who has declared themselves a representative of the universal thing that is state, say United States, or the state of France, right? So it does carry a lot of power. So maybe the zero state, at what point do we have a zero state already within the fact that we're sitting, you know, where we're respectively sitting?
It's when the state, number one, you've exercised the symbol or exercised the Geist out of yourself, where you no longer respect it, you no longer want it to have any power over you. And then the second part of that is carrying enough physical force to stop those with the Geist of the state within them from enforcing it on you. You know, when we talk about what the state is, it's an idea that lives inside of us, yes, but it's also the little fingers of the people that believe in it, the bureaucrats, the police, the army, everything like that. It's one thing to say, haha, the state doesn't exist, and then get a baton in the face by a Chicago police officer. And it's like, there it is. That's the state right there. You feel that? Yeah, that was that. So that sort of thing. It boils down to what you're able to enforce.
Yeah.
You know, there's a great example. In 2014, I saw this video in Belle Glade. Belgrade has one of the highest rates of poverty in the nation. And so you've got these, it's a mostly black town. So the reason it has the highest poverty rate is because these people have basically been systematically taken from over generations and generations. It is colonialism in essence, because all the businesses are designed to take the money out. These people are forced to work in sugarcane fields. All the money goes out. It's like it's like a vacuum for money, and then none of the money goes back. So it's extremely poverty stricken. Gangs out the ass, drugs like a motherfucker. So there's great video because they're making a video. It's a bunch of young guys, showing off their guns and shit like that. And this Florida sheriff rolls by, and they're all like, "Oh yeah, fuck the police, fuck you, pig, fuck you." And the dude's got his window down. Now there are plenty of places in Florida where I would never dare to scream "fuck you, pig" at a cop car rolling down the street because I'm going to get my ass beat. But there were so many of these people. And they were all so angry, and they didn't give a fuck that the cop just kept going. Now, where was the state then? You know what I mean? Like, for a moment, you've successfully defeated because you have the physical force. So, again, it's not like a lot of anarchists and, sadly, a lot of egoists think that, hey, if I decide that I'm going to go hide out on the Pacific coast and live off Social Security that I fucking won or some shit like that, you're living in a rat hole. You've hidden from the state, sure, but you haven't destroyed really much because you're on a little tiny rat hole that you can masturbate in while the state is just right outside.
Is that isolating furry comrades? Are we isolating?
No, everybody masturbates. I think.
Oh, that's true. True. Okay.
But when we have the physical, and that's why I often use the example of like criminal gangs and stuff like that, because these people do have enough physical force to successfully ward off, probably not defeat the state, but in those moments of where they can directly challenge force to force. I don't know if you've ever seen videos of like when the cops go to protests where there's open carry. Totally different ballgame. They're scared. They don't want, because cops are cowards. When they're facing an unarmed opponent, they'll beat the piss out of you. When there's even a small chance that these little bastards aren't going home, they're extremely respectful. They don't want to cause any trouble because at the end of the day, sure, they have the courts. They have, if you do anything to them, you'll go away for life. But that doesn't mean that they'll go home. And even if you're guilty and they throw you away and lock up the key, everything like that, they die. They don't get to go home. And so they don't want to risk it. So suddenly, look at, again, you're talking about the symbol of state. Look at fucking Mexico. There are sections, the Mexican state does not exist.
I got robbed by a cop in Mexico. So
I'm saying, I'm not surprised, but the cops take a back seat to the cartels. The cartels decide.
Well, they're probably this one and the same, really.
I'm seeing a lot of videos where they're killing the cops. So they're ultimately the cops that do what they say survive, but at the end of the day, it's the cartels that are deciding what the fuck is happening. Absolutely. So Mexico as an entity does not exist.
What you said about the state is the baton sort of in your face. So we talk about categories. You can have the category of the state, and you can have the category of the law and the symbol, with the badge you were talking about. And it's funny, you were talking about how they're fake cops, but in what sort of sense maybe the fake cop is not a fake cop so long as somewhere out there's like a precinct. Mm-hmm. That's what sort of
very true.
So that's sort of what distinguishes it. But then there's the sort of the point where you're past the symbol is when you're hit with that baton.
Yeah. The minute that the 3%ers start throwing zip ties on you and are running a detention facility, they are the police now. Whether in name or in function, they are performing the role.
Yeah.
In the same way that the early 1900s Russian revolutionary Petrograd, was that really Tsarist Russia at the time when it was fully under control of the workers' Soviets? No, that it was essentially, and it was running on a completely different system. It was essentially its own country. The state had ceased, the state of Russia, of the Tsarist imperial Russia, had ceased to exist inside revolutionary Petrograd. That is why the state always fears competition. It can't allow competition. The minute it allows choice, it creates its own downfall. That's why they always go after any group that sort of threatens their monopoly on violence and their monopoly on territorial control, they go after them whole hog. That's why they went after the fucking Black Panthers. That's why they go after all these armed groups. They don't want even an opportunity for them to effectively start running the streets. Because when they start running the streets, then people are forced to make a choice between the state and the armed group.
Yeah. Sort of like, well, there's the famous sort of idea of the state as that big as the king, you know, the Hobbes picture, the Leviathan, where it's all the little guys. And that was sort of what I was reminded of when you said it's sort of like, as soon as they're like hands become like mechanisms of this state, like the czar, say like a czarist has their gun, and then somewhere else there is a czarist sort of fort. That's the extent of the czarist sort of regime, right?
Yes,
that's sort of
exactly, and that can be effectively pushed back. So, you know, the border is an invisible concept. It's the forces of control and harm and, you know, authority that the state seeds out, that, you know, those little fingers can be crunched back.
Yeah.
That's why you have whole neighborhoods that basically exist outside the law and outside the state, because the cops can't get in. And that's also why you have these different societies that are able to function on their own and according to their own rules and everything like that, because they have created a power, whether it's hard in the way of like street gangs, mafias, stuff like that, or if it's soft in the sort of example of like the Masons and stuff like that, to where, you know, yeah, you're a cop and you arrest me, and obviously I don't think the Masons have this amount, but, you know, back in the day when it was important to be a Mason, or when Masons actually had power, especially like in some small towns, you know, yeah, you arrest me, it doesn't matter because I'm a high-ranking Mason and your police chief is a Mason, and our organization, our little invisible force network of relationships has precedent. So I am released. So at that point, how much of the American state has control over me? If when I can flaunt the law in the same way that the ambassadors inside the United States operate, the American state scarcely exists for them. You had that Saudi Arabian diplomat.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, the two naked girls crawl out of the embassy screaming, covered in blood. They've been beaten. They said that they've been, you know, raped over a huge period of time. The Saudi fucking guy jumps on a plane, flies back to Saudi Arabia, and no charges are ever brought. It disappears.
Yeah.
So did the United States have any power over him? Absolutely fucking not.
No. So those batteries are sort of important to keep in mind, in that I guess the difference between the fake cop with just somebody with a fake police badge and zip ties in their trunk is to what effect, when new things happen, does that sort of base behind them. And like you were talking about the Masons, like what I know about the Masons, very little, is sort of like, yeah, they seem like stoics, I guess. Hypothetically, they're like, they divide their day in a certain way, and they do other shit.
Really?
But maybe not. What do you know about them? Let's get into like borderline psychosis stereo. But it's not, because we'll try to keep it like. So what's your view of the Masons? Because I don't know much about them.
Oh, I was actually good friends with someone whose grandfather was way deep into the Scottish Rite. He was a 33rd degree Mason, which is the highest, and he was in the Scottish. There's like two. First off, not every lodge is the same.
Yeah.
The Scottish Rite Lodge is way more interested in ritualism and stuff like that. And what they refer to as a blue lodge is basically a lodge where people join up, and they're mainly interested in the social benefits. You know, a group of people that they can depend on. It's everything like so. Not every, like, you go to a Mason lodge today, it's not like they're all gonna fucking like have some kind of weird secrets and shit like that. That's usually, you have to be interested in that. And there's also, the Masons got in trouble. They came up with this order. There's a whole bunch of like miniature orders within Masonry.
Yeah.
So, you know, Scottish Rite, you got that one weird one with the little pentagram. So there was this one that they came up with on a yacht. Like, oh, we just like having fun. And I think the Billiken was their symbol, and they would get in trouble all the time for like inviting prostitutes to like Masonic gatherings, just like having these huge fucking orgies and drunken blowouts and shit like that. Like, and it was a whole thing inside the Masons, like this whole like mini church of debauchery of just basically like, hey, we have all this power and money. What can we get away with?
Yeah. In the same sort of token, I guess that's sort of how the state works as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Right? I mean,
Yeah,
and there's so much more of the state than there are of Masons.
yeah, exactly. People forget that the state isn't just the laws and stuff like that. It's the benefits. It's the idea that if I'm the senator, no one was fucking pulling me over ever. You know, like
Yeah.
if I'm a cop, I'm never getting pulled over. If I'm a cop, I can beat the piss out of my wife. What is she going to do? File a restraining order? That goes to my friends. I'll make sure that doesn't fucking happen. Except with the police, you really see the power of the state. They're the ones that decide what the laws are, everything like that. That's what the real state is. It's this combination of authority, force, all aligned in a hierarchy. In essence, the authority is the symbolic battery. It is the symbols and the trappings that alert you that I am important. I decide what's going on.
Yeah.
And the force is the engine of the state. It is the thing that beats you and keeps you in line. So they feed into one another because the symbolism and all of that is necessary to motivate those people within the engine to keep it going.
And what's interesting is I titled sort of our talks "Egoism and the Absolute," in the sort of like hope that we could bridge Stirner and Hegel without sort of an idea that we would be able to. But we're really doing it right now. Like this is pretty much.
Is that what the Sonic the Hedgehog meant, you think?
So Justin Murphy is something entirely different.
Okay, I wasn't sure.
Hegel's not huge in accelerationism, actually. They're Kantians. They like categories, and they like connecting categories and feeding loops back. But the state in Hegel is sort of like the ultimate mediator, because eventually you have individual conflicts, and they all have their own logic, and then they're of course negated by sort of a greater power, and then ultimately you get the state power and you get the laws. But what we've seen this sort of stumble upon is this sort of idea that it's like, yeah, but the specific, what it really looks like is the people who are acting it. Then there's their sort of bases, and then there's their sort of symbols, which are enacted in different sort of ways. Like for the Masons, you have like a social lodge, you have like a hedonism lodge, you have like a government lodge. You could have whatever you wanted with that symbol, and then it's acted out in these different sort of ways. So the absolute of it, it has holes in it, which is what Hegel sort of didn't get, and what we are getting.
There you go. Yeah. So what you're saying is, and if I can quote you here, what you're saying is that we are better than Hegel. That's what I'm hearing.
Oh, we're definitely. First of all, yes, we are definitely better than Hegel.
Well, you heard it here, folks. I mean,
Hegel,
he's a fucking doctor. What, I can't argue with that.
Well, Hegel was more meticulous than us, so we could be righter than Hegel. We could be more correct than Hegel. But Hegel was like, everywhere he went, he like wrote down everything that fucking happened to him. Like, so he was very meticulous. So he was like systemically like, he was, even if his conclusions weren't right, there was so much stuff put into his symbol. Like you talk about just energy, and this will prep you for Justin Murphy, you know.
Oh boy.
Feedback loops just into his shit until that symbol becomes, say, charged, just because he's putting that energy into it, just like yeah. So I guess on that note, we're sort of at our time that we usually sort of end it. So this has been a good one. We've really, I think, talked about where egoism comes in, where the individual comes in, and how they relate to symbols, how the state relates, and how you can also have that sort of power as soon as you have if you have a base that is big enough, if you have a community that is actually meaningful, that actually is doing things that's deeper than just capitalism and empty sort of monetary transactions, and then sort of taking everything and then squishing and throwing out everything except its monetary or material value. You know, you can have a better version of that. The state is not a special entity; it's just a very big entity with a large history.
At the end of the day, it breaks down to individuals with sticks. You know, like the energetic compound, the bases and everything like that. The bases don't function without those individuals with the big stick that will beat the piss out of you. And the minute revolutionaries become people with big sticks that can beat the piss out of somebody else that's trying to whoop their ass, all of a sudden the state is in deep shit because it knows it relies on that level of force. And again, look at Mexico. I mean, like, the level of violence there is something that this state can't compete against. There's no fucking way. It doesn't matter how many cops Mexico has. It doesn't have many soldiers come in and try to clear it out. If the cartel says, look, I won't just kill you. I'm going to kill your entire fucking family. Very painfully. And look, I just did it. What are you going to do? Like, at a certain, they're so ruthless and cruel that, not many people can compete with that. Their level of force has essentially made the force of the state obsolete. There was one thing I watched. It was incredible. Like, they caught this guy who was smuggling drugs across the border. And they're trying to interrogate him. And, and he's like, look, I'm not going to tell you anything, okay? Because I'm dead. I'm dead. If I was caught, I was going to be killed. It doesn't matter what you put me in, witness protection. It doesn't matter. I'm going to die. They're going to send someone to kill me. The difference is if my family's going to die. If I say a single fucking word to you, my entire family's going to die. So there's nothing you can do to me that they can't do worse. And the cops had no argument. What can they say? There's nothing they can do. And all of a sudden, all that state power, the courts, the judges, the laws, faded away because raw, naked force was brought up to the umpteenth level and the state couldn't compete.
Yeah. So, make some communities, I guess.
Yeah, hell yeah, make communities.
Or an alternative to making communities is you can join a community and you can make it, more efficient or more, you can help. Like, I don't know, I know we talked about unions and things like that. I actually joined the IWW.
Well, they're all right.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. They do some stuff, but that's an already existing sort of thing. And through that you can do certain things, but that's of course nothing like the state with the hands and the sticks. That's a different thing.
Give them time. Give them time. Maybe things will get so terrible in the United States, like the IWW goes full fucking militant. They'll have like armed workers, militias. We don't know. It could happen.
Blue lodges. There's social lodges. And then there'll be the stick. There'll be the stick lodges.
There you go. It'll happen. It'll happen.
All right. Let's end it on there with the cops apparently driving by.
There you go.
All right. Dr. Bones, as always, it's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. All right. Signing off.